The third dimension pertains to movement in space, forward, backward, side to side, and up and down. The fourth dimension pertains to movement in time, past, present, future, and some would argue in parallel. But there is also a fifth dimension. This is the dimension of imagination and creativity, a place where men like Evan Nagao has pushed the limits of creativity as far as yo-yo is concerned. And we are going to examine his newest Edge yo-yo, the Edge Beyond. We're going to examine its merits or its mediocrity and answer the question, will it take us beyond our expectations or will it fall under the shadow of twilight? I'm simply Mike. This is a definitive yo-yo, and we're going to talk about the Edge Beyond.
Hope I didn't freak anybody out, but it's official. Evan Nagao and his series of Edge yo-yos is a bona fide brand now. I think this guy's gonna need a publicist. Say what you will, his accolades are well earned. This is the Yo-Yo Factory Edge Beyond, the full review, and we are gonna get down and dirty. It all started with this little guy right here, the OG Edge. A groundbreaking design and one of the best to come out of the factory in a while. Not that the factory was bad, but this put things in a different perspective, a different direction. The follow-up was the Delrin Wedge, which came out last year. Not bad. Then we had the Polycarb Wedge, which I still think is one of the best plastics on market today. In a surprising move, Yo-Yo Factory put out a mono-metal edge called the Co-Allow Edge. This is a beautiful shot right here. Other reviewers have compared this yo-yo to a one that I'll mention a little later in our comparison section. But here's the family, all in attendance except one. And here we have our newly redesigned, newly minted bimetal entry of the Edge Beyond. Here it is stacked up to the original OG Edge, and we'll do a full comparison a little later. We'll talk colors. Here we have the Golden State blue and gold, the Cleveland Cavaliers wine and gold, the black and blue, which looks quite nice. But best of all is this Nini version, which I had to get. Here we have the presentation. The 2-throw Yo-Yo Factory holder, an extra string or place 4 strings, booklet, and the throw itself. Nice and shiny. What's striking to me is how sophisticated it looks. I ended up having to go to a doctor in a new building, and the architecture and this yo-yo fit perfectly. The angles, the shine. Check these specs. That is a custom NSK bearing, which is a nice touch. Laser engravings on the rims, and the titanium axle, which they say should help from stripping, but we'll see. Just a bit more about the bearing. After opening it up, I found out that it was shieldless, which I prefer. It makes it easier to clean and lubricate. And here we have that axle. Now, truthfully, I've never stripped a yo-yo, so I don't see any problems with this just yet. And here we are out in the wild, nice and pretty. Before we address the elephant in the room, we need to make a couple of comparisons, namely the Alta, the original Edge, the plastic wedge, and the Countach, and see how this thing stacks up against those. We'll start with the Alta. Unfortunately, I don't have an Alta to make a comparison physically or in its playability, but the specs put it as a slightly smaller yo-yo under the Edge Beyond, or EB, or maybe I'll just call it EBI for short. Next up is the plastic wedge, and although you really can't compare a bimetal to a plastic, there is a certain familiarity among the two that warrants more than a passing interest. Namely, it's in the rims. Both of these share that hard H shape, and they feel very similar in the hand, despite being made of different materials. Next, we'll consider the OG Edge versus the EBI. Gone is the step straight or modified V in favor of the hard H profile. Now, the EBI feels familiar, but different enough to let you know that you're playing with something a little different. Not better or worse, just different. And finally, we're going to compare the OG Countach to the EBI. And here's where we draw the heaviest comparisons. Both of these are very similar in size, shape, and play dynamic. The EBI is just a bit more powerful, as you would expect, because it's a bimetal. Now, I don't think One Drop has ever made a bimetal yo-yo, so Yo-Yo Factory kind of beat them to the punch. But make no mistake about it, this is a bimetal Countach. I don't know about yo-yo production, but it's not unheard of for yo-yo designs to overlap. The Countach, however, does have a slightly larger diameter, as pictured. If the similar aesthetic offends you, then I'm going to give you the warning, buyer beware. I'm including some play characteristics in this video to make it thorough. The plastic wedge is still very solid. That weight and that width does lend it to be one of the best plastics. And there is that certain familiarity as I spoke of earlier. But it's a plastic, so it's a little floaty. Against the OG Edge, we find that the OG is still a very confident player. Its particular strength is its width, and it makes you feel like you can do a lot more with it. I got a lot of practice and a lot of learning to do still, but with the OG Edge, I feel very confident, and I still love this yo-yo very, very much. And the cheaper price tag just adds to its value. So if you haven't gotten one, I highly suggest you do so. Picking up the Countach after a little hiatus, I'm struck by how smooth this thing really is. I chalk that up to the 10-ball bearing that One Drop typically uses. This thing feels premier in a way that, well, some of the other yo-yos I played with recently just don't. This is my top 5. So how does the EBI stack up? Well, the smoothness is there, but there's a bit of a pulse vibe, just a little bit. Touch. I'm gonna say 9.5 out of 10. And as far as being up there with the Countach as far as playability, yeah, it is definitely up there. Just a bit more powerful, as you would expect from a bimetal. This thing is excellent, but not quite better than the Countach. As good, but not better. And some people may have a problem with that. I hope not. It's time to address the elephant in the room, namely the price. See, $150 is a big ask. Me personally, I've already made my decision and I enjoy it, but I do understand if some people decline. With 4 so-so colors and an inconsistent presentation across different vendors, somebody may argue that this is not worth it to them, and I can see their point. But if you do decide, I think you'll enjoy yourself. it is pretty solid. And if you decide you want to wait a little bit until they bring the price down some, Yo-Yo Factory is known for that. So, be patient. In the meantime, there is an edge for every budget, so you got options. Good show. Evan and Yo-Yo Factory have obviously invested heavily in this Edge Nation concept and present to us quite a few different choices, yo-yos, and an aesthetic that hopefully will translate well. We'll see in the coming months how it plays out. But for now, I'm satisfied. And next time, it's time for another shootout. This time, 3-way. And the countdown continues. Only a few videos left for me, and then I'm gonna start winding down. In the interim, you guys keep it thorough. I hope your binds are tight, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.